This week is bird problems. Last week it was the isolation edition of Tale Wagging. This time it is Birdman, bird problems. So I'm going to be telling you the story of bright Finist the Falcon. I think he looks like this. It makes the ladies look like this. But this is the picture that I actually found that I thought was really cute. This is our protagonist arriving at the seashore and looking upon a palace. So if you haven't been to Tale Wagging before, this is my second podcast where I tell very strange stories from fairy tales, folklore, weird history. Last week we did Isolation Edition where I told the story of a time in Georgian England when King George was the king, where it was really fashionable to hire a hermit to live in your garden. You basically built him a little structure. You would hire him. You could put an ad in the paper and he would go live in your garden and be a wise hermit who would say weird things to people and show up at your parties and offer wine suggestions. And the other story was about a maiden in a tower who was not Rapunzel, who was Maybelline, who was stuck in the tower for 7 years with no light and, oddly enough, a 7-year supply of food and drink that lasted. So maybe all jerky and canned foods. I don't know. This is the story of bright Finist the Falcon. I'm going to say this name so many times, it's going to turn into a drinking game. This is a Russian fairy tale, by the way. We're very Russian here. In olden times, there was a merchant and his wife who had 3 daughters. The eldest 2 are said to have been plain of face and hard of heart and cared for nothing but finery. So they're shallow and they like nice things. And they are apparently not much to look at themselves. But the youngest, Mariushka, her first personality trait is being a good housekeeper. Great, she can scrub a floor. Oh, that's so nice. She is also described as being kind-hearted and so beautiful it couldn't be written about. One day, the merchant's going to go to the fair, as that is his job, and he called his 3 daughters and asked, "Hey, I want to buy you each something. What do you want? What'll it be?" And the eldest says, "Bring me a dress. I want a nice new dress." The second says, "I want a fine scarf. I want to be fancy." But Mariushka replied, "Father, bring me only a scarlet flower to set in my window." And her 2 sisters laughed at her and mocked her like, "Idiot, why do you want a flower? You should ask for a new apron. You're so good at housekeeping." She ignored them. And when her father asked, like, "Hey, are you sure? Because I can get you something real nice." And she said, "No, I want a flower. Get me a flower." So the merchant went to the fair. He had no problem finding gifts for his first 2 daughters, but he could not find this single red flower anywhere. This was very elusive. He looked in the whole town, couldn't find one, and he's driving home. He's so disappointed that he's going to disappoint his youngest daughter. And as he rode along, wondering, what am I going to do next? How do I even look her in the eye when I bought fancy things for the other 2? He met by the roadside in the forest this little old man who had a hooked nose, 1 eye, and a face covered with a golden beard like moss. Actually, he sounds quite charming. And he's carrying this box on his back. And so the merchant asks, "What are you carrying, old man?" And the old man says, "In my box is a little scarlet flower, which I am keeping for a present to the maiden who is to marry my son, bright Finist the Falcon." The merchant's like, "That's kind of weird that that's the exact thing I need, but I'm not going to question it right now." And he says, "My youngest daughter asked me to bring her a scarlet flower. I really don't want to disappoint her. Can you please sell your flower to me?" And after thinking about it for a while, the old man says, "Okay, you can have the scarlet flower for your daughter only on the condition that she weds my son, bright Finist the Falcon." Merchant's like, yeah, you said his name already. It's really elaborate. The merchant thinks about it. Okay, not bringing the flower home would make me a bad dad. But so would promising to marry my daughter to a perfect stranger. What to do? Well, old man, give me the flower, and if my daughter will take your son, he shall have her. Like, there, I'm going to leave it up to her. And the old man says, have no fear. My son is really good at wooing. She'll be into him. And gives the box, and then he instantly vanishes. He just goes up in a poof. I'm assuming that there was like a flash bomb. Very dramatic. Just leaves like Job in Arrested Development. It's like magic. No, it's my illusion. So the merchant is pretty freaked out by the sudden disappearance of the person he was talking to, and then he hurries home where his 3 daughters come out to greet him. It gives the eldest daughter the beautiful dress, the second daughter the fancy scarf, and there was much rejoicing. Yay! And then he gives to his youngest daughter the little box, and he says, here's your flower. I take no joy in giving it to you because to get it, I kind of promise that you'll marry this old man's son, Bright Finist the Falcon. And she says, oh, don't worry, Dad. He's good. He's kind. He flies as a bright falcon in the sky. And when he touches the damp earth, he becomes a hero of heroes. He's a cool dude. Dad's like, so you know this guy? He's like, oh yeah, he checks me out at church. Dad, you did what I asked, and if he's good at wooing, I'll marry him. All right? Does that sound good? And so she took out the scarlet flower and she caressed it. She's petting her flower, held it close to her heart. And when night came, Mariushka locked herself in her room in the attic. Such a Cinderella type, good at housekeeping and lives in the attic. She takes her little flower from its box and sets it on the windowsill and began to smell it, fine, and kiss it, okay, and then just looked into the dark blue sky longingly, like any fairy tale princess might, even though she's not a princess. And suddenly, in through the window came this flying, swift, beautiful falcon covered with many colorful feathers. It landed on the floor and was immediately transformed into a young prince. Poof! And this prince is so handsome you can't write about it, so clearly they're a good match. It's fine. Mariushka was frightened at first because strange birdman just came in through the window. Okay. But the prince calmed her down, the prince, and they talked till dawn. And their hearts warmed with joy being with each other. It's all very lovely and good feels. And when the day began to break, Bright Finist the Falcon said to her, each night when you set a scarlet flower in the window, I'll fly here. Here's a feather from my wing. If you wish for something like a dress or I don't know, whatever, go on the balcony and wave the feather to the right, and whatever you wish shall appear. If you don't need it anymore, wave it to the left. And then he kissed her goodbye, turned into a falcon, poof, and was gone. She watched after him. My dreamy birdman. Every night she put out the flower. He flew in her window every night. I'm sure everything was totally cool because they're not married yet. And then Sunday comes along and her sisters give her a really hard time because you didn't ask for new clothes. Now you're going to look really ratty when you go to church. Silly housekeeping sister. Mariushka's like, never mind. I can pray here at home. Don't need to go to church. Boom. After they were gone, she sat down at her attic window, watching all these finely dressed people go to mass. And when the street was empty, she went to the steps under the porch and waved the bright feather to the right. And instantly, there appeared a crystal carriage with thoroughbred horses harnessed to it, coachmen and footmen in gold, and a gown embroidered with precious stones. She got dressed super quick and went to church. And when she entered the church, she is so beautiful that all the people turned to look at her. They said, some czar's daughter must have arrived. Even her 2 sisters did not recognize her as the one they left in the attic. And when the service was over, she's the first one out the door, just runs out there, hops in the crystal carriage, speeds home. Then she takes off the splendid gown, put on her own, like, I don't know, presumably gray and boring outfit, went to the porch and waves the feather to the left, and everything just disappears. The carriage, the horses, the coachman, the gown. And then she sits back in her attic window like, totally pulling it off. Yes. Cinderella magic. And when her sisters returned, they raved about the princess-type person who showed up at the church. Mariushka did such a quick costume change. She forgot to take this diamond pin out of her hair, and her sisters happened to notice it. And they're like, what a lovely jewel. How do you have that? Where did you get it? You never asked for anything nice. And it looks a lot like the one that the Tsar's daughter had. So what gives? And they try to grab it from her. Got real grabby. They like nice things. She runs to her attic room and hides the pin in the flower. I guess just kind of stabs it. And even though they searched everywhere, they couldn't find it because they don't care about flowers. Later that evening, when everyone went to bed, Mariushka sets the flower in the windowsill like normal, and bright Finist the Falcon came flying in and was transformed into the handsome prince. They talked together till dawn, just like they do every night. But this time the elder sisters are paying attention. They're horribly jelly. They notice this pin. They don't know what is going on. They don't know about the nighttime visits, so they're kind of hovering at the door with their spyware, listening. And they hear voices. They think this is really strange. And then they hear like kind of a rustling, something to do with the windowsill opening. So they kind of quickly run over to another window in the house and look out, and they see a falcon flying away. That's kind of weird. They knew someone was in there and they became a falcon. We don't want to see our sister be happy, so let's make a plan to mess this up. Yeah? So one evening, they prepare a sweet drink of wine, and in it they put a sleeping powder and talked her into drinking it. Why would you ever take something from the sisters who don't like you? I don't know. But Mariushka is very trusting, drinks it, falls into a deep sleep. They lay her on the bed, and then they stick some big knives on the edge of the windowsill pointing up. And they're kind of like crisscrossed like this. They're just like cutting. So these big knives are pointy end up on the windowsill, and it's a trap. When dark fell, bright Finist the Falcon came flying to his love, and the pointy end went into his foot. He's a little upset. He feels betrayed. He wonders where he went wrong with his life. He cries out, "My beautiful dearest, don't you love me anymore?" And then proceeds to issue some very lengthy instructions to her sleeping body. Maybe it would have been a nice idea to leave a note. But he says, "You'll never see me again unless you search through 3 times 9 countries to the 30th Tsardom. You shall wear through 3 pairs of iron shoes and 3 iron staves, and also eat 3 iron loaves of bread. Only then shall you find your lover, bright Finist the Falcon. TM." She's going to have an epic journey ahead of her that's going to be extremely uncomfortable. Let's continue. She apparently heard him in her dreams because in the morning when she awoke, she saw the sharp objects and the blood and began to cry immediately. She figured, maybe I should try the magic feather waving thing, but just like Dumbo, it doesn't work. She really wants her Birdman to come back, but the charm is broken. Feather is no good. She remembers the lengthy instructions she heard and sighs. Oh boy, my life is gonna suck. She went to the smithy and asked for 3 pairs of iron shoes and 3 iron staffs and 3 iron loaves of bread to sustain herself with. She puts on the first pair of iron shoes and an awkward cap because it's just got to be as uncomfortable as possible. Takes her iron staff in one hand and sets off toward the dark forest for a very uncomfortable time. She walked and walked for months. She wore through 1 pair of iron shoes and broke the first iron staff to pieces and had gnawed away at one of the iron loaves. The forest grew thicker and darker, and all at once before her was a little hut that stood on chicken legs, turning without ceasing. That's right, one of my favorite Russian characters is back. She talks to the hut, because that's a thing you should do. She says, "Hut, hut, stand with your back to the forest and your front to me." And the hut nicely obeys. It's just like, well, I guess I was spinning, but sure, I'll face you. Mariushka goes inside and found Baba Yaga. Baba Yaga is someone who shows up in a lot of Russian fairy tales. Sometimes she's a helper, sometimes she's a villain. In this story, she's a helper. And apparently Baba Yaga doesn't necessarily have to be one person, as we'll find out in this story. You can have a lot of Baba Yaga cousins who all have similar powers. What's really fun about this version is Baba Yaga is kind of described as a bit of a giantess. Like when Mariushka walks in, Baba Yaga's nose is like in the rafters of the loft, and she's got like a leg kind of sticking out of one window. Like she barely fits in her hut. Why? Why doesn't she have a home that fits her? Baba Yaga's laying around her house, not quite fitting in it, being weird, and says, "Oh, hey, stranger, why'd you come here to my house?" And just kind of walked in. Mariushka says, "Oh, grandmother." Well, this wins her over right away. Apparently, it's a really respectful term, even though nowadays in America, there's a lot of women who don't want to be thought of as a grandmother. In Russian folklore, this means respect. So she's off to a good start. "Oh, grandmother, I beg for your kindness. Please, let me stay here for the dark night. I am searching for Bright Finist the Falcon, who is my friend. My sisters were total jerks to him. I could use some help." Baba Yaga says, "Oh yeah, I know him. You have a long way to go. Yeah, you can rest here for the night." Gives her some food and drink and a bed, and in the morning wakes up Mariushka and gives her a present for the road. A golden hammer and 10 diamond nails. Bling bling. And Baba Yaga says this: "Here's what I know. Bright Finist the Falcon is engaged to a czar's daughter. You might get there in time before the wedding. When you come to the Blue Sea, the bride's going to go for a walk." She does this a lot. "Casually demonstrate the awesomeness of the hammer and nails in front of her, and she'll want to buy them from you, but only exchange them for a chance to see Bright Finist the Falcon. Keep going. Go to the house of my second cousin. Bye-bye." So the journey continues, and Mariushka walks until the second pair of iron shoes is worn through, and the second staff is broken to pieces, and a second stone is gnawed away. Ew, gross. Does she even have teeth anymore? And then she comes one evening to the edge of a swamp to another hut that's on chicken legs. And she asks the hut to face her and finds another Baba Yaga inside. A similar exchange happens. "Where are you going?" "Oh, grandmother, I seek my dear friend Bright Finist the Falcon, whom my cruel sisters wounded." Super jerks. The second Baba Yaga also knows Bright Finist the Falcon. How could you not? He's practically a superhero. I don't know what heroic stuff he does though. He's mostly just kind of a, I don't know. He's kind of the distressed maiden type in this tale. "Yeah, I know him. Yeah, you've got a ways to go. He's getting married soon, but rest and eat here tonight and send you off in the morning." So in the morning, the old woman gives her a golden plate with a diamond ball. Okay. And tells her, "When you come to the Blue Sea, roll the diamond ball on the golden plate as an activity." Is this like a hobby that people had back then? Did you roll a ball on a plate? Like, I understand the hammer and nails, but I don't really understand this one. But she says, "The bride will want to buy them from you because they're shiny. Only trade them for a chance to see Bright Finist the Falcon. Now go, and you're going to see my fourth cousin along the way." Mariushka thanks this Baba Yaga and goes on her way. She walked a long way again. And when the third pair of iron shoes was worn through, and the third iron staff just crumbles to pieces, and she's just kind of nah, nah, nah on the third iron stone. Ew, ew, ew. That just sounds epically horrible. She comes to a dark wood where the tops of the trees touch the sky, and a deep river, and on its bank stood another little hut with hen legs. So cute. Why don't they make these anymore? It's like kind of like a tree house, but magical. She asks the hut to face her and found the third Baba Yaga inside. Lucy asks, a fancy fidget spinner. Yeah, this could have possibly been the earliest fidget spinner. That would be pretty funny. So she finds the third Baba Yaga and she asks, okay, what's your business? You're in my house. What's up? Oh, grandmother, I go to find bright Finist the Falcon, my dearest friend, whom my sisters pierced with knife blades and drove away bleeding. I really like the drama of that, so that's some direct quoting. Baba Yaga says, oh no, that's terrible. I really like him. You know, his home is not far from here, but just stay and rest for the night, send you off in the morning. In the morning, the old woman gives her a news update. So awkward, but bright Finist the Falcon married the Tsar's daughter. Ew, yeah. Hey, here's my magic steed. Go get him. Everything about this is fine. I want a magic steed. This sounds fun. She thanks this Baba Yaga and shot off on the magic steed. By afternoon, she came to the blue sea, and beside it she saw a palace. This palace had high towers of white stone whose golden tops glowed like fire. I bet it's epically beautiful at sunset. She sits on the shore and remembers, okay, I'm supposed to bring out my shiny things and make them look really appealing. And so she takes out the golden hammer and the diamond nails, and I don't know what hammers them into the sand. What does she hammer them into? The story doesn't tell us. Perhaps a nearby tree. Maybe a bench that happens to be on the beach. Using them on something. And almost immediately, because this bride just has like kind of an alert system for shiny things, she shows up and asks to buy them. In some stories, most stories she doesn't have a name, but in some stories this character is called Tsaritsa, which I think is great. We're going to go with it because it sounds like Tsar's daughter, but is a name. And I like it when characters have names. Tsaritsa, in this other story, had enchanted the prince into marrying her with a magic potion. In other stories, she's just the one that happened to be there, and her biggest quality that is negative, I guess, is liking shiny things and being a little tricksy. But I guess we'll give her an edge because she's the closest thing we have to an antagonist apart from the sisters that we never hear from again. So we're having a conversation with Tsaritsa, who wants this stuff. Can I please have your stuff? I'd like to buy your stuff. And Mariushka says, you can have them, but you need to let me see bright Finist the Falcon. Tsaritsa considers this for a minute and says, sure, he's sleeping, but you can look at him. Yeah, I'll let a stranger in to just look at him. This is fine. Everything about this is fine. The bride runs on ahead to his room and sticks a magic pin in his clothes so that he won't wake up. A magic pin. Cool. And Mariushka stands over him, weeping dramatically. But nothing she does can wake him. Oh, no, no, no. When Tsaritsa comes back after Mariushka left, she pulled out the pin, and bright Finist the Falcon woke up and said, someone was here. They were crying a lot, and they were talking to me, but I couldn't wake up. It was so weird. And Tsaritsa says, hey, you were having a dream. No one was here. So the next day, Mariushka has to figure out a new plan. Oh, let's just go to part 2 of the existing plan, actually. She rolls the diamond ball on the gold plate. I guess in circles. Maybe she changed her direction once in a while. She's just sitting on the seashore, rolling my ball on a plate. Plate and ball. It's a cool thing to do. And Tsaritsa shows up as if brought by magnets, like, oh, shiny, shiny. And they agree to the same deal as before, and it plays out the same way. I'll just get to day 3. On day 3, Mariushka stood on the seashore feeding the horse. Remember the magic steed? Apparently the magic steed eats glowing coals. This is so cool. She's feeding him fire. Tsaritsa sees this and is like, whoa, I would love to have a horse that eats fire, and asks, like, I want to buy the horse. Give me your magic steed, please. I need this in my collection of things that are cool. And Mariushka, hoping third time is the charm, says, yeah, I'll give you the horse for nothing, as long as I can go look at Bright Finist the Falcon and be a weird creeper in his bedroom. Now, he wasn't already asleep at this time. Apparently it wasn't his daytime nap time. So Tsaritsa runs ahead, gets to him first, and says, like, hey, honey, how are you? Oh, what's that in your hair? Ooh, let me look at your head. I think I see a bug. And she sticks her magic pin into his hair. Whatever. And he falls into a deep sleep immediately. Mariushka arrived and is incredibly disappointed to see him asleep and unable to wake again. She hugs him and kisses him, cries bitterly. Ah. But Bright Finist the Falcon isn't waking up. Then she notices, hey, there's something kind of shiny in his hair. What is that? Is it a shiny bug? And she finds the pin. She took the pin out of his hair and he woke up instantly. And he saw who was there and he recognized her. And he was so glad to see her. He was really excited about it. And so she filled him in on everything that had happened. Her excruciatingly long, painful journey. The blisters. What I'm assuming are lost teeth. I'm assuming she's just gumming her way through this conversation. But, it was all this intense display of devotion. Like, I really wanted to get back to you. This is how much I love you. And this worked. He loved her more than ever, and he kissed her. And it was epic, I bet. He has to figure out what to do. He's kind of got two wives. He thinks of them both as wives, even though we didn't really have a formal ceremony with Mariushka. Bright Finist the Falcon gathers his council of advisors together and asks them, which wife should I spend my life with? The one who sold me? Or the one who bought me? And they considered. They took it to a vote. I think they probably did like Survivor, and they all wrote a name on a piece of paper and showed it to a camera. They agreed it should be the one that bought you. This is the right wife. And you should hang the one that sold you on the gate and shoot her. And he did. Once again, I don't think anything our antagonist did was that terribly bad, but fairy tales like a cleanish ending where the other person is just completely out of the picture. Oof. Yeah, brutal and unfair. These other women in the lives of the princes, they just always get a bad rap. Sometimes they do bad things, sometimes they're just in a bad situation. There was a lot of variations of this story, and one of the ones I want to tell you about is there was a variation during one of the forest scenes where a bunch of animals are chasing Mariushka. They're being really menacing and coming after her at night. And then, out of nowhere, this gray wolf comes up to her. And she's like, thinking it's going to attack her. And she's like freaking out and afraid. But it tells her, climb on my back. Well, we're going to run away together. I'll take you the rest of the way. And it was the wolf that delivered her to the seashore instead of the magic steed, which is a really cool visual. I think that's kind of awesome. But I like both versions. I decided to go with the magic steed because he came in handy toward the end, being fed fire and got to be like one of the cool toys that was traded to see Bright Finist the Falcon. And the wolf did not get that in that other version. He was just gone out of the story after that point. And there's a lot of other variations in this story. Actually, I cut this down. It was originally 12 pages and I cut it down to 7. There was a version where the dad went to the market 3 different times because he kept forgetting to bring her the flour. And the sisters kept asking for different fancy things. Every version had the sisters asking for ridiculously fancy clothes and whatnot, accessories. Also, there are some versions where Baba Yagas gave her different stuff, like more crafty things, like a golden spool and thread or needle or whatever, artsy things. So I presume she's just doing like super blingy cross stitch on the seashore. In any case, this was the story I put together because it had all the elements I liked the best and names for the characters. I think that this is a sweeter story than most, just because these two people really genuinely liked each other, and they were kind of torn apart by circumstance and evil sisters, and then they get back together at the end. It's not a good ending for the other bride, just like last week's story, but the two people who wanted to be together got together, and it took an incredibly intense display of devotion to do it. There are several fairy tales where this happens, with a couple being torn apart because one of them makes a mistake usually, and then they have to go through this epic, painful journey to find each other again. And I have a few of these saved on my list, but I kind of want to spread them out over time because I don't want to hit you with them every week, like epic journey with iron shoes. No. But that's the story of Bright Finist the Falcon and his magic feather and Mariushka and all the Baba Yagas. I love it when Baba Yagas show up. I think that they're really fun. There's just a lot of personality in Baba Yagas. Thank you for listening to my story. Take care. I'll see you next time.